The small town of Dusty Creek lay quietly under a sky that seemed calm at first glance. The sun was warm, and the air smelled faintly of dry earth and smoke from the saloon's chimneys. Townsfolk went about their daily routines, unaware of the dark clouds slowly gathering over the distant hills. At the edge of town, the river flowed lazily, its surface sparkling under the late afternoon sun. But far upstream, the rain had already begun in heavy sheets, a danger no one in the town could yet see. Among the people of Dusty Creek was a cowboy named Jack. He was tall, with sunburned skin and strong hands, the kind that could tame a stubborn horse or mend a fence without complaint. Jack was a man of few words. People in town knew him as reliable and courageous, though he preferred the quiet of open land to the chatter of a crowded saloon. Life had taught him to be self-reliant. He lived simply, rising with the sun and sleeping under the stars when his work took him out of town. In the same town worked a young woman named Clara. She spent her days at the saloon, serving drinks, singing softly to entertain customers, and moving with grace through the crowded, smoky rooms. Clara was clever and quick, with a sharp mind hidden behind her easy smile. Life in Dusty Creek had not been kind to her, but she had learned to face challenges with humor and determination. She had a way of reading people and situations that made her seem wiser than her years. That afternoon, Jack was tying up his horse near the river after checking the fences, while Clara was arranging glasses behind the saloon bar. The sky, which had seemed peaceful all morning, began to darken. At first, the clouds were just gray patches, but they thickened quickly, turning an ominous shade of black. A soft wind began to blow, rustling the leaves and carrying a faint chill. Townsfolk looked up, murmuring about the approaching storm, but no one could see the danger coming. Suddenly, a distant rumble reached Jack's ears. He paused and looked upstream. His heart skipped a beat. The river, usually calm, was rising quickly, its waters churning and turning brown with mud. "That doesn't look good," he muttered to himself. He could see branches and debris being swept along with incredible force. Something told him that the river would reach the town sooner than anyone expected. Inside the saloon, Clara noticed the change in the sky too. The windows rattled as the wind grew stronger. She paused, wiping her hands on her apron, and stepped outside. When she saw the river, her eyes widened. "Jack!" she called, spotting him near the riverbank. "The water, it's rising fast. We have to move." Jack nodded. "I see it, Clara. We need to find higher ground, quickly." But before they could make a plan, the flood arrived. The water surged through the streets like a living thing, roaring and crushing everything in its path. Horses neighed and ran, carts were overturned, and people screamed as they tried to save themselves. Dusty Creek, once a peaceful town, was suddenly a place of chaos. Jack grabbed Clara's hand, pulling her toward a small hill just outside the saloon. "Hold on," he shouted over the noise. Clara's heart raced, but she trusted Jack. Together, they navigated the slippery, muddy streets. The floodwater was icy, pulling at their boots, and it carried loose boards and broken fences with it. Every step was a struggle, and the roar of the river made it almost impossible to think clearly. As they climbed higher ground, Jack spotted a narrow bridge that could take them across to a safer part of town. But the flood had already damaged it. Planks were missing, and the water rushed under and around it like it wanted to pull everything down. "We can't cross that," Jack said, his voice firm. "It's too dangerous." Clara looked around desperately. "Then where do we go?" Jack's eyes scanned the area. Nearby was an old storage building, abandoned and worn, but it was still standing. "That way," he said, pointing. "We can take refuge there. It's not perfect, but it's better than being swept away." They ran together, the water splashing against their legs, carrying them slightly off balance. At times Clara slipped and Jack grabbed her before she could fall. They were both soaked, shivering, and exhausted, but they kept moving, knowing that hesitation could cost them their lives. When they reached the building, they realized it was worse than they thought. The walls were shaky, the roof looked fragile, and the floodwater was creeping closer. They had a choice: stay inside and risk being trapped if the building collapsed, or try to cross the flood directly, facing the powerful current. It was a harsh choice, one that could easily decide life or death. Jack looked at Clara. We have to stick together. Whatever happens, we face it as a team. Clara nodded, drawing strength from his calm presence. She had faced difficulties before, but never anything like this. She realized that survival depended not just on courage, but also on trust. She trusted Jack completely. The floodwaters continued to rise, lapping at the edges of the building. Jack tested the ground around them, looking for anything that could help them move safely. Clara scanned the area, finding a sturdy branch they could use for balance if they tried to cross. Both knew that every second counted. Finally, Jack made a decision. We're going to cross together, he said. Hold the branch, watch each other's steps, and keep your strength. We can do this. With careful movements, they began their crossing. The water was cold and strong, pushing against their legs. Debris hit them and the current threatened to knock them over at every step. But Jack stayed focused, guiding Clara through the dangerous stretch. Clara followed, her heart pounding, her mind completely focused on every movement. Halfway across, a large log floated toward them, carried by the river's force. Jack pushed it away with all his strength while keeping Clara steady. The effort left them both breathless, but they continued inch by inch. They moved in silence, each step a battle against nature itself. Finally, they reached the other side, collapsing onto dry ground, shaking and drenched but alive. They sat together for a moment, catching their breath, realizing the magnitude of what they had just survived. Around them, the town was chaos. Buildings partially submerged, fences gone, and people helping one another amid the disaster. But for now, they were safe, and that safety gave them a chance to think. Clara looked at Jack, a mixture of relief and admiration in her eyes. I don't know how we made it, she said, still catching her breath. Jack smiled faintly. We made it because we worked together. Trust, quick thinking, and a little luck. That's all it takes. As the water slowly receded, they realized that this experience had changed them. Jack was no longer just a solitary cowboy, and Clara was more than just a saloon girl. Together, they had faced a harsh, unforgiving challenge and survived. Each had seen the other's courage, resourcefulness, and determination. They had learned that sometimes survival depends not only on strength, but also on trust, companionship, and quick thinking. By the evening, the flood had calmed slightly, and the townsfolk began to gather on higher ground, helping each other and salvaging what they could. Jack and Clara, still soaked and exhausted, helped as well, carrying debris, guiding people, and offering comfort. They were not alone anymore. The bond formed through shared danger was stronger than any friendship they had known before. That night, as the storm passed and the sky cleared, the town of Dusty Creek looked different. The streets were damaged, the river had grown in size, and the buildings bore the marks of the flood. But the people were alive and determined to rebuild. Jack and Clara, sitting quietly together on a hill overlooking the river, knew that this day would remain in their memories forever. They had survived the flash flood, faced impossible choices, and come out stronger. And while the world around them had changed, the bond between them had grown, a silent promise that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The morning after the flood, Dusty Creek looked almost unrecognizable. Streets that had once been quiet and familiar were now filled with mud, broken fences, and scattered belongings. Trees had been uprooted, and the river, which had swelled far beyond its usual banks, had left debris everywhere. The sun rose slowly, casting a golden light over the battered town, as if offering hope after the chaos of the previous day. Jack and Clara were already awake, sitting on a small hill overlooking the town. Both were tired, their bodies sore from the struggles of the flood, but their spirits were steady. The night had been quiet, a stark contrast to the roaring waters they had faced, and they had shared stories, laughter, and fears under the stars. That night had formed a connection between them, stronger than either had expected. We survived, Clara said softly, looking at the ruined streets below. I never imagined something like this could happen, and I never imagined I would make it through with someone else. Jack nodded, his eyes scanning the town. It's not just luck, it's how we work together. I've always lived alone, but yesterday showed me that trust is as important as courage. And having someone by your side makes the impossible seem possible." Clara smiled, feeling a warmth she had not known before. She had always thought of herself as independent, able to handle anything alone. But facing the flood with Jack had taught her a different kind of strength, one that came from relying on another person and being relied upon in return. As the town began to wake, people stepped out carefully, helping each other navigate the mud and wreckage. Neighbors offered hands to pull carts free, children were guided to safer ground, and elders were supported as they assessed the damage to their homes. Dusty Creek was alive with the quiet determination of people who refused to be defeated. Jack and Clara joined the effort. They helped lift a fallen tree from a path, guided a wagon that had slipped into the mud, and reassured frightened townsfolk. Their actions were calm and confident, showing that the storm had not just tested them physically, but had also revealed the strength of their characters. Others in town began to notice. Whispers of admiration followed them. People spoke of the cowboy and the saloon girl who had worked together to survive, not for glory, but simply because it was the right thing to do. By mid-morning, the town had cleared enough space to allow for movement, though the damage was still evident. Jack and Clara found a moment to step back and look at what had happened. The flood had reshaped the town, sweeping away old structures, loosening the soil along the riverbank, and leaving everyone with a renewed sense of fragility. But in that fragility was also the potential for something new. Clara turned to Jack. "Yesterday I saw a side of you I never knew existed. You were calm when I thought we might drown, strong when I felt I couldn't move, and clever when everything seemed impossible." Jack shrugged, a faint smile on his lips. "I only did what needed to be done. And you surprised me too. You were brave, resourceful, and quick-thinking. I couldn't have done it without you." For a moment, they simply stood in silence, the bond between them unspoken but understood. The flood had tested their courage, patience, and determination, and in doing so, had shown them that they were capable of far more than they had realized. As the day progressed, the townsfolk organized themselves to begin repairs. Jack and Clara worked side by side, helping rebuild fences, moving supplies, and ensuring that everyone had access to clean water and food. Their teamwork became a model for others, showing that even in the face of disaster, cooperation and kindness could make recovery possible. During a brief pause, Jack and Clara found themselves near the river, now calmer but still swollen and slow-moving. The memory of the rushing water, the debris, and the fear still lingered, but it was tempered by relief and a growing sense of purpose. Clara picked up a small branch that had washed ashore and tossed it back into the water. "It's strange," she said, "how something so frightening can also make you feel alive. Yesterday I thought we might not survive, but I've never felt so aware of life as I did then." Jack nodded, his eyes reflecting the sunlight on the water. "It's true. Danger can change you. It forces you to focus on what really matters, and it shows you who you can trust. That's something I've rarely experienced." As they talked, they discovered more about each other's pasts. Jack spoke of his life on the open range, the loneliness that sometimes weighed on him, and the pride he felt in working hard and helping those around him. Clara shared stories of her childhood, the struggles she had faced in the town, and the lessons she had learned about resilience and hope. Their words built a deeper understanding between them, revealing the layers of courage, vulnerability, and determination that each carried. By evening, the town was beginning to feel like itself again. The immediate danger had passed, and the people were ready to start rebuilding their lives. Jack and Clara had played a significant role in this recovery, and their actions had earned them respect and admiration. But more than that, they had earned a connection with each other, one forged in shared fear, determination, and survival. That night, as the stars began to shine in the clear sky, Jack and Clara sat on the hill overlooking Dusty Creek once more. The town was quiet, the work paused, and the moon cast a gentle glow over the river and streets. Clara leaned back, feeling the cool night air on her face. I think the flood changed more than just the town, she said softly. It changed us too. We faced something impossible and survived. And now, I feel like I can face anything. Jack smiled, resting his arm lightly against hers. You're right. We've seen what we can do together, and I think we've learned something important. Life is unpredictable, but when you have someone you can trust, it becomes a little less frightening and a little more meaningful. For a long time, they sat in silence, watching the river shimmer under the moonlight. Words were not necessary. Their shared experience spoke louder than anything could. They had faced fear, risk, and uncertainty, and they had come out stronger, braver, and closer than ever before. Over the following weeks, Dusty Creek slowly began to recover. Homes were repaired, fences rebuilt, and the town's spirit returned. The townsfolk remembered the flood not only for the damage it caused, but also for the courage and cooperation it inspired. Jack and Clara continued to support the community, their bond growing stronger each day. People often saw them together, working, talking, laughing, and quietly sharing the connection that had been forged during the disaster. Through this shared experience, both Jack and Clara changed in ways they had never expected. Jack, who had once been a solitary figure, discovered the value of companionship and emotional connection. He learned that strength was not just physical, but also emotional, and that courage could be found in trust as well as action. Clara, who had always relied on her own cleverness and independence, realized the importance of partnership and support. She learned that vulnerability could be a strength when shared with someone dependable. By the end of the season, the town had returned to a new kind of normal. Dusty Creek was cleaner, stronger, and more united than ever before. And Jack and Clara, who had faced a terrifying flood together, had discovered a bond that would last a lifetime. The flash flood had tested them, forced them into impossible choices, and shown them the depth of their courage. But it had also given them something invaluable, a friendship, and perhaps more, that would never be shaken. The sun rose one final time over the repaired town, casting long shadows across the streets and the river. Jack and Clara stood together on the hill, looking at the town that had challenged them, taught them, and ultimately transformed them. The flood had changed everything, but in the change they had found something extraordinary: strength, trust, and hope. They had faced fear and survived, and in doing so, had discovered that life, no matter how unpredictable, could also be full of unexpected beauty and new beginnings. With hearts steady and spirits unbroken, they walked down the hill toward the town. Together they were ready to face whatever came next, knowing that no challenge, no matter how great, could ever separate them again. The flood had tested them, shaped them, and changed them forever, but it had also shown them the power of courage, partnership, and hope.